Why is there something rather than nothing? If God is uncreated, if reality must end in something eternal, then another question quietly appears. Why does anything exist at all? Why is there something instead of nothing? Not empty space. Not darkness. Because darkness is still something. Spacey is still something. Even a vacuum contains laws, fields, and possibility. True nothing has no space, no time, no matter, no energy, no laws, no potential. Absolutely nothing. And here comes the mystery. From nothing, nothing comes. This isn't merely a religious claim. It is one of the oldest principles of philosophy. Nothing has no power. Nothing has no properties. Nothing cannot decidito become something. It cannot create. It cannot transform. Because there is nothing there. Yet today a universe exists. Filled with galaxies, stars, planets, life, conscious minds, and questions. How? Some argue the universe simply exists. It needs no explanation. Perhaps existence is just a brute fact. Others say the laws of physics produced everything. But then another question arises. Where did those laws come from? Why do mathematical laws exist at all? Why these laws? Instead of different ones? Or none at all? Every answer seems to invite another question. Until reason reaches its final boundary. Some philosophers conclude that reality itself must rest upon a necessary foundation. Not something that came into existence, but something who's very notorious to exist. Classical theism calls that foundation God. Not a being inside the universe, but the reason the universe can exist at all. Whether one accepts that conclusion or not, the mystery remains. Why is there something rather than nothing? Perhaps this is not only the greatest question in philosophy, but the greatest question a human mind can ever ask. And in the next part, we explore another mystery. Writing. What is consciousness? The greatest mystery within us. The universe is vast, nearly unimaginable in its scale. Billions of galaxies, trillions of stars, worlds beyond counting. Yet among all the mysteries we have discovered, one may be more mysterious than all the others. Not a black hole. Not dark matter. Not the beginning of time. But the human mind. Right now, as you listen to these words, something extraordinary is happening. Your brain is processing sounds. Your eyes are recognizing symbols. Your memory is connecting ideas. But beyond all of that, there is an experience. You are aware. You are not merely processing information. You know that you exist. You can wonder, imagine, dream, question. You can ask, who am I? No telescope has ever discovered that question inside a distant galaxy. No microscope has ever found it inside a single cell. And yet, every human being has felt it. Science has made astonishing progress. We can map the human brain. We can observe neurons firing. We can measure electrical activity. We can even predict certain decisions before people become consciously aware of them. But one mystery remains untouched. Why should physical processes create subjective experience? Why should electrical signals produce the feeling of happiness? Or sadness? Or love? Or beauty? Why does matter become aware of itself? Some philosophers call this the hard problem of consciousness. Not because it is impossible, but because no one yet knows how subjective experience arises from physical matter. Imagine a supercomputer. It processes billions of calculations every second. It follows instructions. It stores information. But does it feel anything? Does it experience the color blue? Does it know what pain is like? Or does it only simulate the appearance of understanding? No one knows. Perhaps intelligence and consciousness are not the same thing. A machine may answer questions. It may compose music. It may solve equations. But is there someone inside? Or only complex computation? Now consider your own mind. You do not merely calculate. You experience. You remember your childhood. You imagine your future. You fall in love. You grieve. You hope. These are not just data. They are lived realities. Materialists argue that consciousness is entirely the product of the brain. Nothing more. Damage the brain. And consciousness changes. Alter chemistry. And personality changes. Therefore, they conclude, the mind is what the brain does. Others disagree. They argue that while the brain is essential, it may not be the whole story. Just as a radio receives music without creating the broadcast, perhaps the brain is connected to something deeper. This idea remains controversial. It is debated in neuroscience, philosophy, and theology. No consensus exists. And that is precisely what makes the question so fascinating. Then consider another mystery. Truth. When you say 2 + 2 = 4, that statement is true. Regardless of culture. Regardless of language. Regardless of history. Truth itself appears timeless. So how does a temporary brain grasp eternal truths? Why does mathematics describe reality with such precision? Why does logic seem universal? Could reason itself reflect something deeper about reality? Or is it simply an evolutionary tool that happened to work? Again. The debate continues. Then there is beauty. Why does a sunset move us? Why does music bring tears? Why does a painting or a poem stir emotions that cannot be measured? Beauty cannot be weighed. It cannot be touched. Yet it changes human lives. Some say beauty is merely a product of evolution. Others believe it points toward a deeper order. Toward meaning. Toward transcendence. And what about morality? Why do humans speak of justice? Why do we believe that kindness is better than cruelty? If morality is only a chemical reaction, why should anyone obey it? If good and evil are merely personal opinions, can anything truly be wrong? History shows us people willing to sacrifice their own lives for justice. Why? Where does that conviction come from? Is morality written into the fabric of reality? Or is it something we invented? Once again, philosophy offers different answers. Science describes how people behave. But questions about what we ought to do reach beyond scientific measurement. And perhaps that is why the search for meaning has never ended. Every civilization, every culture, every generation has asked the same questions. Who are we? Why are we here? Does life have purpose? Is consciousness an accident? Or a sign that reality contains something greater than matter alone? Perhaps. The greatest mystery is not the stars above us, but the awareness within us. Because without consciousness, there would be no science, no philosophy, no art, no love, no search for truth. The universe would exist, but no one would know it. Carl Sagan once reflected that we are a way for the universe to know itself. It is a beautiful thought. Yet another question immediately follows. Can the universe truly know itself? If the universe is not conscious? Or does our consciousness point beyond the universe itself? That question takes us to the edge of one final mystery. Not merely how consciousness exists, But whether consciousness can survive death. When the brain falls silent, does awareness simply disappear? Or is death not the end, but the beginning of another chapter? For thousands of years, humanity has searched for that answer. And perhaps no question has ever mattered more. Writing. What happens after death? The question every human must face. From the moment we are born, there is one journey every human being will someday take. A journey no one can avoid. No king. No scientist. No philosopher. No billionaire. No empire has ever escaped it. Death. For most of history, people feared death because it seemed to be the end. The end of dreams. The end of love. The end of memory. The end of identity. Yet despite all our advances, despite modern medicine, despite technology, despite exploring the distant stars, one question still remains. What happens when consciousness ends? Or does it end at all? Science can tell us what happens to the body. The heart stops beating. The brain loses electrical activity. Cells gradually break down. The body returns to the elements from which it came. These are observable facts. But another question lies beyond scientific measurement. Does the person, the self, the I that experiences life, simply vanish? Or does something endure? Throughout history, cultures across the world have offered different answers. Some believed the soul returns to its creator. Some believed in reincarnation. Others believed death is complete extinction. These views cannot all be true at the same time. Yet each attempts to answer the same mystery. Why do humans so naturally believe that death is not the whole story? Perhaps it is wishful thinking. A refusal to accept our mortality. Or perhaps it reflects something deeper within human nature. Consider this. Almost every person lives as though their choices matter. As though justice matters. As though love matters. As though goodness has lasting value. But if death erases everything, if consciousness simply disappears forever, then eventually, every achievement, every sacrifice, every act of courage, every work of beauty, every memory, is lost forever. The universe continues. But you do not. Some philosophers accept this conclusion. They argue that meaning must be created during life itself. That mortality makes life more precious. Others disagree. They believe our longing for eternity is not an illusion, but a clue. A clue that human beings were made for something beyond this world. Which view is correct? No experiment has settled the question. Near-death experiences have fascinated scientists for decades. Some people describe seeing light. Others speak of overwhelming peace. Some report watching their own bodies from above. Researchers continue to study these accounts. Some explain them through brain chemistry. Others believe they point toward realities not yet understood. At present, there is no universal agreement. The mystery remains open. And perhaps that is why death has inspired more philosophy, more religion, more poetry, and more reflection than any other subject in human history. Imagine for a moment that consciousness does survive death. If so, then this life is not the entire story. It is the opening chapter. Now imagine the opposite. Suppose death is absolute. No awareness. No memory. No future. Then all fear ends. But so does all hope. No joy. No sorrow. No love. No regret. Only silence. Which possibility is true? Human reason alone has struggled to answer. This is why religious traditions have always claimed that revelation. not reason alone, is needed to know what lies beyond death. Philosophy can ask the questions. Science can study the physical world. But questions about ultimate destiny reach into a different realm. Still, one fact is beyond dispute. Death gives life its urgency. Because our time is limited. Our choices matter. Every word. Every action. Every act of kindness. Every opportunity to forgive. Every chance to seek truth. Whether life continues beyond death or not. The present moment is precious. It cannot be repeated. It cannot be reclaimed. It can only be lived. Perhaps that is why the greatest thinkers have urged humanity not merely to ask how long life is, but how well it is lived. Because one day, every one of us will face the greatest mystery personally. Not as an idea. Not as a philosophical debate. But as reality. And when that moment comes, wealth will not matter. Fame will not matter. Power will not matter. Only one question may remain. Did we discover what is true? Or did we spend our lives running from the question? And that leads to perhaps the deepest mystery of all. If truth exists, how can finite, imperfect minds ever know it? Can human reason alone discover ultimate reality? Or do we need something more? That question has shaped the greatest civilizations in history. And it is there that our journey continues.